Goodness gracious. Look at this. And it's not even St. Patrick's Day.
But it's about to be.
So you're preparing a week ahead of time?
Of course. I was born ready.
What are you going to wear for St. Patrick's Day?
I know I have plenty of green. But
All right,
I'm getting in the mood.
Welcome to the Green Show, the Green Room. Look at me, though. Like,
yeah,
I got my Navajo tie on.
You are in the rodeo mood. Just like every day is rodeo, and your boots, by the way, are gorgeous. Please don't change it. Okay. I love the color.
You like my Luke Casey's?
Oh, yeah. Beautiful, beautiful.
Good.
But welcome to TLC Live, everybody, as every Wednesday at 11 in the morning with Cowboy, the Cuban Cowboy, the only Cuban Cowboy that I know.
CC for short.
Today we have, oh my God, a busy, interesting, and amazing show with a lot of information because everything is going on not only in Europe, United States, here in Houston, Harris County, everywhere. I mean, it's like every minute that I open my phone is like something new going on.
Yep. Have we finished counting votes in Harris County? I mean, I don't get this. It's a primary. Very few people turn out to vote, and they still don't have the results, official canvass results. And then the election chief that they hired, because, you know, the county clerk used to count the votes.
Correct.
And it worked well for decades. So the new commissioner's court decides to take that duty away from the county clerk.
It was a very interesting commissioner's court
and
yesterday.
give it to somebody that's never run an election. And then she walked away yesterday.
Well, she said that she's going to stay in office till June.
Draw salary, yes.
Yeah, of course.
Make sure the
till somebody else, of course.
Yeah.
Make sure that we pay for the
Boy,
salary.
I'll tell you, could it get worse in Harris County?
I don't, well,
Can't
we
count
always
votes,
say.
Crime's out of control.
Yeah.
You know, money's being given away. They try to raise taxes to the max. I mean, my God.
We always say it couldn't get worse, but
it does.
It gets worse. Yeah, unfortunately. So, despite that, many good things also happening on the primaries.
Of course, we're very positive. We're happy warriors, as a consultant friend of mine says.
Correct. So, one of the great things that happened on the primaries, it was the Republican nomination for our dear friend Mayra Flores.
Well, let me just say, not only Mayra Flores down in the Rio Grande Valley, but a lot of Hispanics that for the first time we had a record number of Latinos seeking the Republican nomination. And what's interesting is that in Harris County, there are 2 Hispanics in the runoff for county judge.
Also,
it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, this is a historical moment for the Latinos, for the conservatives, for the Republican Party.
I know. And you texted me yesterday, there's also a radio program launching nationally.
That's also, and you're going to be in that show.
We've got competition, finally. I love competition.
It's not a competition, Orlando. I mean, we're just, it's like a team effort.
It's a team
Let's
effort.
Put it that way. Let's put it that way. And one of our also dear friend, that she's a former Telemundo and then Univision anchor. So she is hosting one of the shows.
You're not at liberty to say what it is? Promote it a little bit for our dear friend?
We want to do a proper graphic, and we want to invite them to talk about the show and everything.
Right.
So I don't want to,
All right.
I don't want to spoil that.
Okay.
So we're going to run first before we introduce Mayra Flores in the show. Because Mayra Flores, she won the Republican nomination for the U.S. House in Texas' 34th Congressional District. But also CNN, I was surprised that CNN, took the lead on interviewing her and also Monica de la Cruz. And did a great story. So we have it, and we're going to play that story before we have Mayra on the show.
How typical is it for voters in this area to see a Republican candidate block walking?
Yeah, this is new for them. It is. It's probably the first time in a long time that they have a Republican knocking their doors. Prior to 2020, maybe people weren't as confident in saying that they were Republican, but now people are confident and they're not hiding it anymore. right now.
For decades, Republicans wrote off the Rio Grande Valley as a Democratic stronghold, where overwhelmingly Latino counties stretch along the Texas border with Mexico. But that changed in 2020 when former President Donald Trump made serious gains here and stunned the political world. Now Republicans are investing in South Texas candidates, including many of Hispanic descent, from Congress to county judge.
This is what the Republican looks like. It isn't just about, for the rich or just white people.
Oh, die-hard fan right here.
You follow my page? Oh my God. Can I give you a hug?
Yes.
How old are you?
16. In March
Wow,
I'll be 17.
really?
Yes, just one more year and I can vote.
This area has been voting Democrat for over 100 years. I feel we've been taken for granted. We've been loyal to a party that has done absolutely nothing for us. We have families in Mexico that we are not visiting anymore because we're afraid. So we don't want what we're afraid to come here.
Republican frontrunner and first-time candidate Mayra Flores is running in a four-way primary in one of three top congressional races in South Texas. Both the 15th and the 34th districts are newly redrawn, and sitting Congressman Vicente Gonzalez has switched from the 15th, which became more favorable to Republicans, to run in the 34th, now more favorable to Democrats, where he will likely face Flores.
All the benefits I've had in my lifetime were created by the Democratic Party, and I think most people in my region feel the same.
Monica De La Cruz is a second-time Republican candidate running for the now open seat in the 15th district. In 2020, she came close to ousting Gonzalez, the Democratic incumbent here.
Socialists are ruining our border security, our values, and our economy.
De La Cruz was endorsed by Trump and has echoed some of his false claims about voter fraud, but her central focus is immigration.
President Trump cared about the border, cared about Border Patrol agents and law enforcement agents. So in the 2020 election, people got motivated, were engaged, and worked to win this seat, and we came within 3 points of doing so. When I ran, people said, well, you're crazy, this is a Democrat stronghold. You don't have a chance.
Democrats in South Texas say the claims that their party has forgotten Latino voters are fiction, and that Latino voters were still a key part of Biden's support in major metropolitan areas of Texas in 2020. They argue that the party lost some Latino support in the border counties because it largely suspended in-person campaigning during the pandemic and must do a better job of connecting with voters on issues like the border and the future of the oil and gas industry, which fuels many jobs here.
Unfortunately, the previous administration showed up to use our border wall as a photo op. And it worked because it ended up on the TV. Approaching the border and immigration conversation in that way is divisive, and it takes away from the actual conversation we should be having.
Democrats, who have long had a diverse slate of candidates in South Texas, are confident they can reverse GOP momentum here in 2022, now that they are back campaigning intensively in these communities. Both sides have long acknowledged that the Latino vote is not a monolith. The November election will test whether the GOP can maintain the gains they made among Latino voters in key states when Trump is not on the ballot.
We are the forgotten, and Brownsville has been the forgotten. I am not here to represent a political party. I'm here to represent you.
Wow.
You notice the difference between the conservative and the Democrat, right? The young man that they interviewed said all the benefits that he's gotten were created by the Democrats. First of all, that's false because you need both parties to work together, and they have.
So
but he it's about benefits, and for conservatives, it's about opportunities.
Yeah.
So that's the difference.
And I love
we don't look to government to feed us, to provide us housing, to provide our automobile. Yes, people go through hard times, and yes, we should have a safety net. But that's where they misunderstand us. We want opportunity and great education.
And I love how Mayra Flores and the story.
Yep.
I'm not here to represent a party. I'm just here to represent you.
Yeah.
And with that, Mayra, welcome. Felicitaciones. Congratulations. We cannot be more proud of you, more happy for you.
Thank you.
And this is like, wow. This is a victory, not for Mayra Flores. It's a victory for everybody. It's a victory for for Texas. It's a victory for the Texas Latino conservatives, for your family, for everybody, and welcome to TLC again. But today is like really exciting day.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, TLC is my home, so I'm very comfortable to be. I'm very comfortable to be here.
Mayra, how is the campaigning more active this year in the RGV? What are you seeing? Tell us what's happening on the ground now that we're getting, there's going to be a little lull after the primaries into the summer when everybody's taking a break, when we have Semana Santa coming up and all that good stuff. But then, we're ramping up for the November 2022 election. So what are you seeing? Are the Democrats doubling down, or are you seeing a lot more enthusiasm for the conservative movement down in South Texas among our Latino community?
Absolutely. I see a lot more people more excited, wanting to join our campaign. I don't see that activity and that excitement in the Democrat Party at all. I really don't. And I'm not saying just, because I'm running for Congress in this district, but I've been involved at the local level and I've never seen anything like this. And the Democrat Party here in South Texas is practically dead. But the candidates are the ones having a hard time because the Democrat Party itself, it has died here in South Texas. They bring no excitement at all. Vicente Gonzalez stated very well that he feels abandoned by the Democrat Party, and the Democrat Party has abandoned everyone, including them. So that's not our situation. I feel very supported by the GOP, also at the national level. The RNC is here in South Texas, very active. They're very involved at the local level, and the numbers that you saw here in South Texas is a component of many things, of many organizations like y'all, Hispanic Republicans of Texas. Also, Bienvenido as well has been very involved here in my district. So it was a component of many things, and that's why we tripled the vote in the Republican primary.
How are the Democrats? For example, I was watching Robert Francis O'Rourke, who they had in that piece where they highlighted you. I just sometimes it's fascinating as a political scientist to watch how tone deaf some candidates are. And now we have Robert Francis O'Rourke running as the nominee for the governor's position in Texas on the theory that, hell yes, we're going to take your guns. And how South Texas guys are, right? Everybody wants to hunt down South Texas where whitetail are, trophies, and we have access, and we have all these managed herds down there. So hunting is a big deal. So Robert wants to take away our guns. And then they're talking about, shutting down exploration, and particularly in Texas when it's approaching $5 a gallon for diesel. And this could be so easily fixed. This situation, we're going to talk more about it later, but we have enough production crude in Texas to, the heck, we don't need to buy it from the Russians. We can bring down the prices by just either opening up the XL pipeline, increasing production. I mean, what are they campaigning on?
I agree. Well, to be honest with you, I see no excitement for Beto here in South Texas. And the people that you see behind him while they were block walking, every single person is paid. No one is volunteering for his campaign. No one is volunteering for Vicente. Everyone is getting paid, and that's the reason why they're there. I mean, I even had a volunteer from Vicente's campaign reaching out to me that he supports me, but he needs a job. That he needs a job, and that's the reason why he was working for Vicente, and that as soon as I could afford him working for my campaign, to give him a call. So I just know for a fact that every person that is block walking for them is getting paid, but no one really believes in their message, to be honest with you. And yeah, they're campaigning here in South Texas on, I'm going to give you this, I'm going to give you, more government assistance, when in fact what we need is opportunities for us to be independent. They want to keep us poor. They want to keep us uneducated. That's what they want. That's what Vicente and Beto want for our district. They don't want us to prosper. They really don't.
Tell me, what are the 3 issues that you're going to focus on for November, Mayra, down in the RGV?
Border security, economic opportunities. Those are the issues that the people here in South Texas tell me that matter to them. For so long, our children have to leave South Texas for better jobs, and they want those jobs here. So no one really has to leave South Texas. And I see that the people here in South Texas are, all about family and hard work. That's who we are. I see the potential here in South Texas, and for so long, no one has been seeing the opportunities that we really have here in our district. So economic opportunities is very important for the people of this district, and border security is also very important. A lot of people think that the people here in South Texas are okay with what's happening at the border. No, we're not okay with what's happening. If we really want to help immigrants, we would focus on legal immigration. How can we focus on them being able to come to a safe route where they don't have to pay the cartel thousands of dollars, where they don't have to go through abuse and rape, because that's exactly what's happening right now at the border. We've had over 2 million people coming in illegally. We've had over 100,000 children as well coming in. It's just unacceptable. It's not humane. And but the Democrat Party has been encouraging this, and it just has to stop. If we really care about immigrants, we would focus on legal immigration, because illegal immigration is funding a criminal organization that is destroying Mexico, that wants to destroy this country as well.
Yeah, it's real easy. I mean, if the Democrats want to address immigration, why don't they just issue 1 million work visas, temporary work visas, and let everybody apply, and then you put the cartels out of business? I mean, what are they doing? For years I've been telling folks in Texas, don't get mad at the immigrants that are trying to improve their lives. Get mad at your Congress that does nothing. They've done
right.
nothing.
It's our government. You're right.
It's our government
Who's encouraging this. Absolutely. Because just imagine living in Mexico, or, living in these countries where you have no opportunities, and, you're struggling, and the violence and everything. And they're seeing that the United States is telling them, don't come, but if you come, we'll allow you to stay. So they'll risk it all for that opportunity. So I really do blame this administration for what's happening.
Mayra, talking about blaming the administration, we've been seeing the last few days the gas prices. I believe in the valley, it's been affecting the gas prices too, and it's affecting families. It's affecting people that have to live out of driving, carrying things and delivering things. You are representing, or you are running to represent a position at a federal level. How do you see, talking about blaming this administration, how do you see, because the administration is blaming the conflict over there in Russia and Ukraine?
Well, the prices were already increasing prior to the Ukraine and Russia, but of course this made it worse. But if we weren't buying oil from Russia from the beginning, we wouldn't be in this mess. We can be oil independent here. Start drilling. I don't know what we're waiting for, to be honest with you. And yeah, this administration created this crisis that it's hurting us all. His policies don't discriminate. They're not just hurting Republicans or Democrats. They're hurting us all. I see my patients hurting, my elderly patients, where they don't want their therapy because it's going to cost money, and they have to now choose between their gas or their therapy. It's
unbelievable. People are having to choose between putting gas in their tank or putting food on the table. Mm-hmm. I mean, at $5 a gallon. It's just horrible. Let me just say something, because you said we don't have to buy the Russian crude, because that same crude is up in Canada, where we could have put it into the XL pipeline and brought it down to southeast Texas on the coastal bend, refined it. We wouldn't need, you're absolutely correct, we don't need that crude from Russia. We have it in Canada. We have it in North America. And it's just beyond me that this administration, Open up the pipeline.
And it's getting worse because now, I'm sorry, and it's just getting worse because now he wants to make a deal with Venezuela, another dictator. I mean, you can't make this up. You really can't.
All right, we got a couple of other guests. Mayra, we want to thank you. Again, you're our rock star. To remind everybody that's watching, Mayra Flores was one of our early students through Leadership Latino back in December of 2018 when we first met, and she's been an inspiration to young people across Texas. Mayra, we're proud of you. Keep it up. I think great things are going to happen down there.
And thank you, Mayra. Muchas gracias y muchísima suerte. Y aquí estamos para apoyarte. And we want Mayra Flores insight on the gas prices because we want to get deep on this issue. And that's why we invite Professor Julian Cardenas Garcia. He is a research assistant professor of University of Houston. And he is today with us to give us a better perspective on this situation that was going on. We're seeing the gas prices going up, and we're seeing the government blaming the conflict in Europe. But it's beyond that. It's more than that. So that's why we want to understand the situation. And also, Professor Cardenas is from Venezuela. So that's also very important to know his thoughts about that. Professor, welcome to TLC. Bienvenido. Muchas gracias por su tiempo.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for having me.
So, Professor, I was going to say, explain to those that are watching what is driving this, peak in refined products.
Sure. These are multiple factors. And as actually I was listening Mayra, comments, and she was absolutely right when she mentioned that there was already pressure on the price of oil before we have the crisis, and the reasons were some, of course, linked with the pandemic because we had the collapse of consumption due to the shutdown of many economic activities around the world. So that means that investors in the oil sector stopped doing the investments. And we have 2 years of shortages in terms of investments around the world. And we were already prepared to have these boom and bust scenarios. So we have the collapse of the price. At the moment, the consumption went down. But then as the demand recovers, in 2020, at late 2021, at the beginning of early 2022, of course, we were expecting that price getting higher and higher. This also, we need to add the component of inflation in the U.S. As the dollar as a currency lost value, and is the currency that we use around the world to price a barrel of oil. So that means that the price will increase also in nominal price and of course as well in real price, and we have those pressures pushing the price up for the barrel of oil here in Texas, as well as in the barrel produced in the North Sea, the Brent barrel. And then what we have now is increment in the price, a crisis of prices with steroids. It's kind of volatility with steroids, since one of the countries involved in the conflict in Europe produce more or less 12% of the global production. And it's not the amount of oil that the United States imports from Russia, the one that is driving that price going up. Is all the uncertainties of that Russian oil barrel in Europe, actually. The one that is created because Europe import around 60% of Russian oil and then rely on, Europe, 60% of oil in Europe is imported from Russia, and they have this dependency that now is at risk, right? And oil will be only one side. The other side will be gas prices, because gas prices also have been going up and up. And I think that was something that was in the debate. When Donald Trump came to office and he had that first visit to Europe and met with Angela Merkel, he was already warning Angela Merkel of the risk of the Nord Stream pipeline, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that was in construction at the time and is now ready, but it had not been, Germany had not issued the final permits to put that pipeline to work and to import. And now with the under the current events, Germany have decided just to not to approve, not to authorize the pipeline, and that means that that gas that was planned by Germany and Europe to get access to more natural gas have been shut down. So we have the two products of hydrocarbons, oil and gas, putting pressure in energy prices and energy security.
Yeah, I lived in Houston in the 80s, and we watched as oil climbed well above $130 a barrel, and many of my friends in the oil patch, I remember a couple years ago talking to them. They said, "Oh yeah, we're never going to see $130 a barrel again," and here we are. But you're absolutely right. Now let me ask you, what impact would have been made with respect to inventory supply had we gone forward with the Keystone Pipeline and been able to import some of the crude that we can use from the Canadian shale?
These are decisions that false narratives that sometimes try to ignore that this type of circumstances may happen. That an energy crisis may come, and now we realize that having extra access to gas or to oil was necessary. Not only the XL pipeline, but also that will provide more access from energy sources from Canada, but also local production in the United States. So in the last year, in 2021, that idea that it will be better to call OPEC countries to produce more instead of incentivizing local production, because we just came from a cycle of 15 years where the United States came back to be the #1 producer of oil in the world. And that put into trouble other countries that actually have an agenda against the foreign policy of the United States.
Correct.
And so in terms of energy security, of course, there are many concerns that can be many reasons legitimate on climate change, but that is the energy transition process is not immediate. We cannot believe that we can rely on renewable energy sources at this point. That will actually put society into a risk of energy security. I don't know if you saw the tweet from Elon Musk early this week saying that he said, "I hate to admit it, but we need to produce more oil." And I was thinking, you don't have to hate reality. I mean, reality and the facts. It's not that you hate, that expression. Reality means that we still are a global economy that relies on hydrocarbons. We are doing a transition rapidly on gas technology for gas, and actually the United States has been a powerhouse in terms of the development of liquefied natural gas, which is kind of a breakthrough technology in the energy sector, which is actually one of the other drivers of the crisis in Europe, because the United States became the #1 exporter of liquefied natural gas to Europe. Second is Qatar, and the third one is Russia. So that disruption in technology, that is a consequence of the regulation that allows investors to create all the terminals and invest in the tankers that take this liquefied natural gas to Europe, are actually the ones also creating drivers for the crisis that we have right now.
Yeah.
So, Professor, to clarify, the prices have been manipulated. It's not really because of the conflict in Russia and Ukraine. The oil companies have been manipulated in the pump, the prices.
No.
Well, I think manipulated, I will say we are facing volatility that is common in this market, and it's a consequence, again, for any capitalist or people who believe in free market. If you are going through a pandemic and there's no demand, investors have to protect themselves by no investing. The issue will be, when will be the time when they will start investing again to produce more to catch up with the demand. So we were in that period in the second half of 2021 and the first quarter of 2022, in which demand now is, had been restored, and we start traveling, we start using, getting back to life again, getting back into track. But the issue here is that what happens if, when people have to get back into track in producing more, then there are policies or regulation that, block them to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna say to Andrea that I don't think the oil. I know for a fact Chevron, Shell, BP, Exxon, they don't manipulate the prices. They participate in a global market. The prices are set by supply and demand, and the professor is absolutely correct. I mean, when the economy crashed because of COVID, everybody stopped production. Banks quit lending. Some people had to foreclose on assets because they weren't paying. And now that the economy all of a sudden is coming back and roaring, and people are getting out, he says, people, you can't just go move a rig out to the Permian Basin and start drilling tomorrow. It takes years to create the infrastructure. You got to put a road in. You got to acquire right of way. You got to hook into the pipeline. You got to get it to market. You don't ramp up overnight. And so what's happening, and as I agree with him, is the demand is exceeding the supply right now, and that's what's driving the price up. It's not Exxon sitting there calling Shell and saying, hey, let's charge $5 a gallon for diesel.
I took a video yesterday. We're going to play while we're talking because, I went to probably 4 or 5 different gas stations, and it was a difference of $1. I think probably it's because it was depend of the area. Also, they charge the price, but yeah. So let's Mark, let's play the video while we keep talking, because I want to see the difference between that was a Memorial and 610.
Yeah.
And then I went to back, to my area, which is Chimney Rock and Memorial, and it was less expensive. And then I went down to your area, which is more turns to Shepherd, and it was more expensive. So that's what I was asking. They're just putting prices.
Well, I mean, a retailer like a Valero station or the Shell stations, the Exxon stations that you see, generally those are independently owned, and so the owner, participating in the free market, Andrea, can sell his fuel for $4.70 for diesel, as you see on the screen. Here's $4 for gasoline. But you don't have to buy it. You can go down the street, or you can go to Kroger and use your 10-cent discount. I mean, that's the beauty of the free market. There is no. We do have gouging laws, for example, when there's natural disasters, but we're not going through a natural disaster. So the free market here dictates. And so, yes, these gas station owners can price it at whatever they want. You don't have to buy it. It's like going to Kroger. You may not buy a loaf of bread for $15 when you can go to Randall's and get it for $1.20.
Yeah, or you go to Whole Foods and you're going to get it expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But definitely the only way to get it down is to have more supply, and so more production with. And I want to take one of your comments, Orlando, which how long it takes to get an oil field into production in Texas, and you mentioned some delays. Of course, it's an effort sometimes for years. But if you use an example that in Eagle Ford or in Midland, it may take 2 years, 3 years, maybe, even it can be in that range. As for that timeline in Mexico, it will double. As for that time in Colombia, it will triple. As for the amount of time, it's even more efficient these days, based on the consequences, the access to technology, to bet in U.S. production than to, for example, believe that Venezuela can take that infrastructure that has been destroyed by Chavez and Maduro's regime, and that can turn into a supplier that in what the United States or refineries in the Gulf of Mexico can rely on at this point. It may take years.
Yeah,
so
no, you're
it's
right.
not a solution for the crisis right now.
You're absolutely correct. I mean, people don't realize, Professor, how long it takes to build a platform, either both onshore and offshore. It takes years just to secure the hundreds of millions of dollars and organize financing, and then you got to go through the construction phase. Then you got to tow that thing out to the Gulf of Mexico or to the North Sea or wherever, and then you got to drill. I mean, that takes decades, folks, and so that's the problem. And so, you know, he's absolutely correct, because PDVSA, for example, relied on U.S. companies that had the skills, the technology, and the financial resources to maintain the infrastructure in Venezuela. But when the socialist communists take over, as they do in every country, they think that is the piggy bank for them to implement their socialist programs. What they fail to understand is those resources at PDVSA should have gone back to invest in the infrastructure. And now that's why an oil-rich country like Venezuela is completely broke, and it's sad to see that the Venezuelan people are literally starving, just like the Cubans did. Socialism is not, a proper way to approach a market. I mean, I know people wax eloquently and think it's beautiful, and everybody gets a home, and everybody gets health care, and everybody gets an education. That's propaganda, folks. Because if it were that good, people would be flocking to Venezuela. They would be flocking to Cuba. They would be flocking, to the Eastern Bloc countries. So, we've experienced it. We're all immigrants.
Yeah.
We're all immigrants.
And now in Colombia, it's we're about to have presidential elections, or we are shaking, seeing what is going on in Colombia, and I'm sure you totally understand what is being going on in Colombia, Professor.
We just had in Houston President Duque.
Yes,
that's right.
He was here like 2 days ago.
During Syria Week, he made a very interesting statement about that interaction of the U.S. government delegation in Venezuela, and he was more or less, in the same, thinking that I was commenting about how fast can production be restored in the U.S. because the access of technology and the network of services that is very handy to get access here in the United States or Texas. And how come somebody can believe that you can enter into an industry that is completely destroyed, and you can start from the ground and rely? I don't know who created that narrative that can be a short-term solution for the current situation. I would love also to mention a fact. I mean, the data that probably will be interesting for the audience of your program, and it's the fact that Texas by itself produces close to 4 million barrels of oil a day. And when you take the biggest producer in Latin America, it's Brazil, which is surprising that it's Brazil, because in the 1990s, Brazil was out of the chart. It was not even there. And it's now produced just about 3 million barrels of oil a day. The biggest producers of the past were Mexico. Mexico is now below the half of the production of Texas. It's below 2 million of barrels of oil a day. And Venezuela is just a quarter of those 2 million. So Venezuela only today produces around 12 or 10% of Texas production.
Yeah, but Professor, it's the same problem. Pemex uses the resources rather than reinvest in the infrastructure to implement, AMLO's social plans. PDVSA, same thing. They used PDVSA's resources as a piggy bank. And Petrobras did the same thing under, when Lula was in. I mean, they used the oil production revenue for social programs and failed to make the investment to keep up their production and producing the asset. And it just keeps repeating. It's just phenomenal. I mean, you bring up a great point. By the way, quiero comentarte que yo viví en Caracas, Venezuela, después que salimos de Cuba. Y no sé si usted sabe, porque usted es muy joven, pero mi padre era el locutor de los Tiburones de La Guaira.
Gran equipo de béisbol.
There you go. You know. So anyway, Professor, look, it's a real honor to have you. I'm sure that we're going to invite you back,
Yes.
and but we do appreciate your time, and we're delighted that you're at the University of Houston. I'm a graduate of the University of Houston, so I'm proud of our departments. I'm proud of our chancellor over there, and there are great things happening at the University of Houston. Obviously, you're one of them.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Profesor, muchísimas gracias por su tiempo. And unfortunately, Orlando, the gas prices and everything that is going on with that department is not the only issues that we're facing. Also, we're facing issues with threats of cyber attacks. And that's why we invite today Professor Eric Botz. He's the director of the Global Cybersecurity Program at University of St. Thomas. Professor, thank you so much for your time, for being with us. And we want to put in a perspective what is going on. We know that cybersecurity has been an issue for a while, since we are pretty much a tech, globally, it's tech in the whole world. But now, with the situation and the conflict in Russia and Ukraine, everybody is afraid that this is, and everybody's been saying, like, I'm getting like weird emails, and should I need to change my passwords? What we need to do, and what we're seeing around the world, what we're seeing in-house, and what we can tell the community and our viewers.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to have this chat with you. It's a rapidly changing dynamic with cybersecurity. As you know, during the buildup of Russian forces around the Ukraine, people in industry, people in the government, cybersecurity experts around the globe were very concerned that prior to the kinetic phase of the assault, there would have been a global cyber attack, mainly aimed at Ukraine, but also attacking what we like to call the supply chain, which would be internet service providers that connect Ukraine to Europe and the United States and the rest of the world. And interestingly enough, the initial cyber attacks against the Ukraine were relatively unsophisticated. We call them distributed denial of service, or DDoS attacks. They hit about a dozen Ukrainian government websites. They attacked a couple of the two largest banks in the Ukraine and disrupted the country's ATM system. We didn't see a wholesale attack against their power grid. And the Ukrainian government was able to restore services rather quickly. And so on this side of the globe, and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency sent out a widespread alert, basically telling government and civil society and private sector to put shields up, prepare yourself, it's coming. And we've been in a sense of heightened awareness and in our defensive posture, but we have yet to see the outbreak of the level of cyber attacks that we thought we were going to see. There's a couple of reasons I'd like to maybe talk about for your listeners. And I think we have been inundated with cyber attacks for at least a decade. Mm-hmm. Some of them coming from nation state actors. The four big ones are China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran, attacking various sectors of our economy. And so over time, we have developed sort of an all hazards approach and an all hands on deck approach. Within the community, the cybersecurity community, there is a lot of information sharing. The government, university researchers, private sector cybersecurity firms, and there are many of them, highly trained individuals. We're all working together on this and sharing intelligence. The big tech companies are involved, like Microsoft and Google. AWS and some of the others. So it's an all hands on deck, everybody working together, sharing intelligence. And I think we're actually getting a lot better at defending the country against cyber attack. Now, you can never rest on your laurels because anytime you thwart an attack, the attackers redesign their attack vectors. They look for new vulnerabilities and they change their attack profile. So it's an ongoing process. But what I really like to do is let people know that as a community, we are working so well together and sharing a lot of intelligence. And it's not just in the United States. We're working well with our traditional allies like in NATO and our allies in Asia like South Korea and Japan. Everybody sort of coming together because we're all connected. It's a global environment. One of the things I like to tell my students is that all commerce is e-commerce. The global economic system sits on a digital platform. And what we're finding is as we bring these sanctions against Russia, some of this will have an impact on us. Just recently, two of the biggest American companies that are operating in Russia with their supply chain, running their fiber optic networks and the like, Lumen and I believe the other is Cogent, have pulled out of Russia or they're suspending their operations. So I can anticipate that at some point, Russia may be reeling. They're fighting right now a disinformation and PSYOPs campaign between Russia and Ukraine. And then we've had the anonymous hacker collective has declared war on Russia and is taking down Russian government websites and actually taking YouTube and social media images from the battlefield in Ukraine and projecting those onto Russian media sources in order to break the cycle of disinformation that the Putin government, the poor people in Russia are living in a information bubble, an alternate reality that the regime pushes forward, and they don't have access to credible information coming from outside. So one of the things that is happening right now are there's various groups that are attempting to breach that bubble and to provide people in Russia with alternate viewpoints of what's going on. I agree. I think you mentioned something about what we can do. Go ahead and ask your question.
Well, it's becoming increasingly more difficult, Professor, to find a trusted source of information because in the old days, when I was, back in the 40s and 50s, you look like a young man, but we had 3 networks, right? Everybody trusted Walter Cronkite, and that was the news, and he signed off every night saying that that's the way it is, or that's the way it was. But this instrument has democratized the news. Anybody in the world, I tell Andrea, she was a broadcaster for many years. I don't know how the news industry survives nowadays because if there's a fire at St. Thomas University, you're not going to wait for Channel 2 and Channel 11 to send a truck and a cameraman over there. You're going to go to a student's, Instagram and watch the thing live.
Not just that, so many things, so many apps. I was, I'm sure you're familiar with Ring. Everybody's familiar with Ring. You put the camera and they ring the bell, and you have the camera. You can ring the bell at the same time. So Ring, not only you can see your feed from your camera live, but there is also a community on Ring. So it's like neighbors, and around your zip code. And they start posting things. So you get the news like, so-and-so got robbed. So-and-so, did you hear the gunshots? Did you hear the boom that it happened yesterday, I think, around Westview? So it's not just Instagram or any social media. It's many social apps like and technology apps like Ring that now is giving you the headlines.
But that's right. But where I was going, and I think the professor talked about this, is, when you look at these global conflicts, and he mentioned the actors that are always playing in our space, in our technology space, which is Iran and North Korea and the Russians and the Chinese, they are putting information out on social media that looks like a credible story to try to convince the American people that this is what's going on. And that's where I see the danger for society. What I am pleased to hear, Professor, because one of my concerns was that literally they could shut down the power grid in any sector of the United States, and or disrupt, let's say, aviation through the Federal Aviation Administration, disrupt the communications, they disrupt the banking system. So I'm pleased that hasn't happened, and I'm pleased to hear that you're saying that we're doing a lot of information sharing to protect ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I tell you, it's very prescient of you to bring up those examples, because I gave a talk recently and I said that if Russia, fully anticipate their retaliatory capability will be directed at our financial services industry, oil and gas, and transportation. Those are areas that they feel that they might have a competitive advantage if they disrupt ours. As you know, we're cutting Russia off. The United States and its allies cutting Russia off from a lot of the financial resources that are used by the oligarchs, but also by the Russian government itself, which depending on who you want to talk to, could lead to almost a complete collapse of the Russian ruble, which we're seeing it just tumble on global markets. But this question of energy, and you had a very lively conversation about energy. And we all know the United States is the number one oil producer in the world, and we're number one oil and gas producer. If Russia were somehow to use cyber-enabled capabilities to further disrupt the global market by attacking the United States in our production, upstream, midstream, and even downstream, that would have a much greater global impact than we're seeing now with the rising gas prices. So anything that we can do, the community is working really hard to protect those particular industries as well as others.
Yeah.
Professor, let's talk to the regular families, what they can do to try to protect themselves of cyber attacks. Because, when we talk about these, at federal level is one thing, at the government is another thing, and the companies is another thing. But just regular families that, I was hearing from inside of one of the bank tellers that she was telling me, I cannot say the name of the bank, but she was telling me that recently she's been seeing a lot of people taking their money out of the banks and leaving the minimum and, like carrying cash since we start seeing the conflict in Europe.
So a couple of things on that. There are basic things that an individual can do or small business can do. A lot of the attacks come through what we call phishing. Phishing spelled with a PH. And phishing is basically sending you an email that has a malicious code embedded in the email or a malicious attachment. So the idea is that be mindful when you're reading your email. If you see something that comes from a source you don't recognize or you're not comfortable with, go ahead and just delete it. Don't open that email. Don't open the attachment. There are a couple of tools you can get. You can download what's called Virus Total. It's an open source tool. You can, if you see a URL that you are not familiar with, you can put it in there and it'll scan it through about 40 or 50 different antivirus scans to give you some idea whether or not it's safe. But the best thing to do is just don't open anything you're not 100% sure of. Strengthen your passwords, maybe change your passwords more frequently. Go to multi-factor authentication. which usually means that you can set up on your computer so that when you log into your email, you'll get a PIN number through your phone, and then you have a second login where you put your PIN number in. Always update your operating systems. You know how if you're running on the Microsoft environment, you have Patch Tuesday, and you make sure you download all the. Usually it happens automatically, but if you haven't used your computer in a while, you might want to check and make sure all the updates have been downloaded. And the biggest thing you can do is buy a removable hard drive and do a systems image and back up all your data.
I can't believe how many people don't do that.
It's really not that hard. Now, there are some online backups. There's some services that you can back it up to the cloud. There's some people who do that. But the idea is you have to have a backup. It's like having a spare tire in your car. You want to have something there. So if your system, if you have to take your system down or rebuild it, or if it crashes, you have your important data. You can also encrypt your data. A lot of those things can be done relatively inexpensively and easily. So that's what I advise to all my friends.
I got to tell you, Professor, for an old man like me, you know, this 3-step authentication is killing me. I don't have a database big enough to put in the passwords, and you know, I love the 4-digit password. Now they want 16 digits with an ampersand and a symbol and a capital. It's my God, you know, it's like, is this gonna stop?
Professor, it sounds like a joke, but it's an anecdote. It's a real story.
I mean, just trying to store your passwords has become a challenge.
So I wanted to ask, do either of you remember a time if you lived in a rural environment, you didn't even lock your doors?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And some people didn't even have a lock on the door.
You have a house in
I have a house in South Texas near the Mexican border between Uvalde and Del Rio, and I never locked the house. I mean, I slept with the doors open, the windows open, and unfortunately, because of the security problem along the border, now I have to carry a sidearm because it's gotten so bad. But yes, I remember those days where people... So I got to tell you, we emigrated to this country. It's a funny story. In 1962, my father was hired as the first Spanish voice in Major League Baseball for the Colt 45s that became the Houston Astros. So when we arrived, my dad was proud to be in America, and he was telling my mother how honest people were. And we went to a mall back then in 1962 called Mayra Mall at Beechnut and 610. And he went to a store called Graham's Men's Clothing Store, and he bought a brand new suit and he hung it in the car. This was May, so you know what the temperature's like. And my mother says, "Aren't you going to lock the car?" My father says, "This is America. People are honest." He came back and his suit was gone.
Oh my God.
Oh gosh, great story. I brought this up because now the things that we do with our computers that we weren't doing 10, 15 years ago, it's becoming second nature. Correct. And so, and also again, another good thing to point to, because I don't want it to be too negative, is that the internet service providers, the people that build our applications and operating systems and all that, are building more security into those systems. So security awareness is becoming just commonplace. But one of the things I'd like to do is encourage parents to bring their children into the conversation about internet security awareness.
Yes.
Because all the kids are using these devices now, and there's a lot of sometimes they're the low-hanging fruit, and the bad guys can get in.
Yeah.
Also, there's cyberbullying and things like that. So parents really need to be involved.
You're absolutely correct. You know what? We'd love to have you back someday, because cyberbullying is becoming an issue. I am alarmed at the number of suicide teens, and a lot of folks are talking about the influence of social media and bullying on. But Professor, we're out of time. We're just really honored to have you. And I was just thinking, I have a dear friend that used to be the Houston airport director. His name, former Navy man by the name of Eric Potts. Do you know Eric?
I know Eric, and he was U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
That's what it was. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Colonel in the Corps of Engineers. Yes, right. I know Eric. Yeah.
So Okay, well, I'm glad you do. All right, well, we're going to have you back. Thank you for all the wonderful things you guys are doing. Houston is blessed. Rice University, University of Houston, St. Thomas University, Houston Baptist University. We have so many resources, and every time we need experts, we have generous friends at these universities that take time out of their schedule. So thank you to both professors.
Well, it's been
thank you
my pleasure.
Thank you.
Profesor, muchísimas gracias. Habla español también. Muchas gracias, profesor, y muchas gracias a Claudia de Shams por poner todo esto junto y siempre ayudarnos. Sí, ayudarnos. Ella nos ha ayudado los últimos 2 programas y va a seguir ayudándonos. Así que muchísimas gracias, profesor. And thanks to Claudia, thanks to University of St. Thomas, thanks to University of Houston. And thanks to you, Orlando.
And reminding everybody that April 5th is the Tough Tejano event at the Mays Museum at the Whitty Center in San Antonio from 11 until 1. We're going to honor our Tough Tejano. We have Congressman Henry Bonilla. We have a lot of great folks attending the event. So if you want to attend the event, space is limited. Go to I know I don't have to say that, toughtejano.com. All the information's there. Buy your tickets, sponsor a table, and get involved. Until next week, Andrea, let's go rodeo.
Oh my God, you on the rodeo. Ya estás listo para el rodeo. And also visit us in TexasLatinoConservatives.com, and we'll see you guys next Wednesday. Nos vemos el próximo miércoles. Chao, chao.